Good evening. No, it's just an evening. Thank you, though. How many of y'all remember from fundamentals, while loops, do whiles, if thens, for loops, right? We're going to talk about looping tonight. And we'll talk a little bit about getting into arrays and how arrays are formed with for loops. What is an array? Christina?
A set of data represented by a single variable name.
Not the book definition. It's a bucket that you pour stuff in. Okay? That's an array. It stores information. That bucket is its name, right? That's the illustration I'm looking for. Not necessarily maybe that explicit, but you put the content of data into a bucket. You name the bucket Scott. The array is called Scott. Okay? Now you can store characters. You can store strings. You can store integers. You can store a lot of things in there. Well, JavaScript is very similar to Java in the way that you create an array. You call a var, saying it's going to be a variable. You give it a variable name. In this case, the array name. You're going to throw out your assignment statement. Then you're going to say a new array, and it has to be new array in that specific context. And then instead of in brackets like in Java, it's in braces or parentheses. How many elements are going to be in there? What is the first element ID number? 0. Excellent. Y'all are doing better than my park students. I'm still trying to get them over the concept that it starts with 0, and if you have an element of 5, there's actually 6 elements in there. I mean, you put the 5 in there, 0 to 4. If you put 6, then you have 0 to 5. They don't understand that. So if I'm going to create an array that has 10 a set of cell phones, I'm going to say var cell phones equals new array of 10. That just means it has 10 identifiers. It starts with 0, so 0 to 9, right? So if I want to index to that value of that specific part of the array, it will be whatever my index is, starting with 0 and going up. The element is what the piece of data that is contained in that array. Okay? We have an array of 10 elements. Make sense? 10 drops in the bucket. Those are elements. The index is the value of that element. So element 0, right, would be 1. I mean, opposite direction. Element 1 would be ID of 0. Go with me? Always take the number of what you want to go to minus 1 and you're good. Or if you're looking for a specific element ID and you need to know what the actual number of it is, which I don't know why you would ever do it because you'll never call it that way, then you would add a 1. All right. So if we're going to do multiple arrays or multiple elements, how do you assign the information? Well, we can put it in a for loop, ask the user for their value stored in that element, and then the iteration be like cell phones in bracket X, where X is whatever the iteration of that for loop is. Does that make sense? Because if we start X equals 0, while X is less than 10, so you'll go to 0 to 9, right? You'll go through 10 times, X plus plus. The first time you get in there, it's going to say X is 0, so you're going to store that information in element 0. Next time it goes through, it stores in element 1, even though that's your number 2. I don't want you to get confused with how many there are as much as I want you to know the element ID. Now, when you're storing the element, it has to go in the bracket, because that's how you call that element ID. That's different than when you're declaring the array when you put it in parentheses. Does that make sense? Y'all with me? Kind of. I'm going to show you an illustration here. We're going to compare Java to JS, okay? JavaScript, right? If I'm assigning the array name, right? And I'll call it a new array of X number. That's how you do it in Java. Do the same thing, except this part right here is that in JavaScript. Now when you're trying to access the information or store something into an element, you'll have an element name You see how it's similar to Java in that regard. The only difference is when you're declaring it. So don't get confused. Because if you put it in this format, it's going to throw an error. How many of y'all had Java? Quite a bit of you. You'll start typing it like that, I guarantee it.
Will JavaScript do two-dimensional arrays as well?
Yes. You can do as many arrays as you want. Just like Java. It's just a for loop. Or nested for loops.
Well, I'm talking about like two-dimensional.
Yes.
So it's more like a table.
Yeah, it's a nested for loop. You write your row first, then you go to you write your column, then go to your next row. All right. We can create a new array without any elements because it may be a dynamic. We may not know what the user is going to enter. Like if we ask the user, "Are you done with this array?" Press Q to quit. After you ask them a question, they hit a blank answer that is null, then you can say or Q to quit. They hit Q, it's done. You may not put anything in that element. So you declare it like this. You would say cell phone equals new array of infinite. It could be as many as you want or as little as you want. This is more of an array list. Okay, cell phones 2, BlackBerry Storm 9530. We can change them dynamically. We can put them specifically in there if we want to. In this instance, we created the new array of cell phones. Didn't say how many we were going to have, but on element 2, I want it to be that. That's all we did there. Make sense? We can assign the values to elements when an array is created, where you just say new array, and then in the quotes you just put out what the data is that's going to be in there. This takes the pain in the butt. Because now it'll say, okay, we have 1, 2, 3. So the element size on this new array would be 3, right? 0, 1, and 2. You can do it that way as well. Very similar to Java.
Now, in this case, though, unlike Java, it's still dynamic. You could still add another
Oh,
element
I could add
that you don't
1,500.
declare.
In Java, you can still do the exact same thing.
Well, if you initially declare it to 3, you can't go past that.
Yes, you can. It's dynamic arrays. When you code it like this, you can.
An array list would be dynamic.
That's what this is.
But an array in Java would.
Exactly. That is the difference. Array lists are your dynamic arrays. But when you code it this way, it's still an array, but it's just an array list. Still functions the exact same way. All right? If you know an exact number of what you're going to do, program it that way. Don't leave it open as dynamic, because you take up too much buffer space. If I wanted to print out a specific element, this is all I need to do. You have that document write line, as you're all familiar with, right? And all we do is call the variable name. It's just calling the array name. Same thing. And then give it the element ID that we're wanting. Or you can do cell phones X and put it in a loop, and then it'll print them all out like that too. So, all right, because you're just incrementing your variable of X. If I want to modify it, all I do is come up here, and go 1, 2, and then if I say, okay, well now cell phone 2 or cell phone 0 is going to equal add world edition, the 8830. Next time it prints it out after this assignment will be that. All right.
So is that when it goes back through the loop again? Or?
Well, it doesn't have to be a loop. I'm just saying, if I assign these 4 straight, okay, what would print out if I did a printout of that array element of cell phone 0, it would print out BlackBerry Storm 9530 right here. But if I did it on the back side of this one, then it's going to print out 8830 World Edition.
Okay.
Y'all with me? The length of the length property of an array class. All it tells you is how long that array is. All right. So we have cell phones, new array. We've already done these parts up here. In the paragraph format, the cell phone array has blank elements. And the variable name would be cell phones, which is the array name, dot length, because that's that attribute of it. Does that make sense? Remember, anytime I have the period, I'm looking for an attribute or an object or property of whatever element I'm talking about. Not to be confused with the element, an array element. The element is being whether it's a string or whether it's whatever variable you're using. Does that make sense? I don't want to confuse anyone with the use of the property. Decision making or flow control. Basically, what orders are going to come first? Now, there are special types of JavaScript statements that you can use to dictate making decisions, right? They're in every programming language, and they're called if statements. If this matches this condition, do this. Else, do this. Else if, do this. All right? So you have your if, put it in parentheses, what the conditional statement is, and then say what it's going to do. If, in parentheses, x equals 0, print x equals 0. All right? That's simple. So what we have here, we have example var equals 5. If example var is equal to 5, that's what that double equal means. We're doing that comparison, right? There's that condition. Then we'll write window alert. We'll pop up the window and say the variable is equal to 5. Pop up another alert. The dialog box is generated after the if statement. What's the difference? Why would this only pop up? Anyone have an idea?
Well, the indentation, I mean, that
The
first window dot alert is within the if statement.
There you go.
Not the second.
The second one would come in after the if statement.
So the
So
second,
go ahead.
the second one will print either time.
Yes, after the if statement is completed.
Right.
If this is a false statement, it just goes and says it prints it after it ran the if statement. So you would always get this statement, but you would only get this if that variable equals 5. If I change it to 6, then I only get that second statement.
So there's no container, there's no like curly braces or
Nope.
anything, just the one that directly follows it?
That's why there's that spacing stuff you want to really pay attention to. Okay? Boom. What's going to happen if I do it this way? This is going to pop up and that statement is negated. Alright? Use the command block. Now, let me clarify that, John. You were asking if you had to put in braces. If it's one line, no.
Oh, okay.
Because that statement is part of the if statement. Let me go back. See, I don't have that closed until I get right here. So this is all really one big line.
So at the semicolon?
Yes. From if to the semicolon is all that if statement. But when you come in here to do a block or have multiple ifs or multiple statements that would write with it, then you'd have it in the braces. Does that make sense now? I wanted to make sure I didn't confuse y'all on that. And then the document would print out after that if statement if that condition was true. If the condition was false, it ignores everything in here and prints that out.
So just by good form would be to always put curly braces.
Yes, if you do that, it's not going to error out. It's not going to cause any problems.
You
But if
don't
it's
want-
one line, then yeah.
Well, even if it's one line, just per convention.
Oh yeah, exactly. I mean, you don't have to for the one line, but I always do anyway. Anytime I have an if statement, so I know that here's my statement that I'm going to print out after the condition has been met. It just keeps that flow going. It's not going to hurt anything, not going to give you any errors. And so, Windows.confirm method. Let me go back here real quick. We had that Windows alert. All that does is pop up a little Java pop-up box that says, hey, alert, alert, alert. You know those annoying pop-ups you get all the time from when you have spyware or adware trying to affect your system? That's all that is, JavaScript. Now you can go and right-click on any web page that gives those pop-ups and look at them and understand the code, right? All right. If you have okay, we already got that. Executes if one action, depending on the outcome of the condition. Now this is where we get into kind of a nested conditional statement, meaning that if my condition is true that it will do this one, else it's going to do something else. Make sense? So, Windows.confirm method will display a confirmation box with an OK and a cancel button. Okay? So, you say window confirm with the message instead of Windows alert. Alert only gives you the OK. You've accepted, you understood what was going on. Windows confirm gives you the option to cancel or accept it. Would you like a cup of coffee? You say OK. I'm assuming it's bring you a cup of coffee, hopefully. If you click cancel, they're not going to do anything. All right. Basically, it's just an if-else statement. If this condition was true, do it. If it's not, do this. And you can have multiple statements by putting in the braces. Like John mentioned, just go ahead and put the braces in there because it's not going to hurt anything and it keeps your mind in that focus. All right. So we're going to call today Tuesday. If today was equal to Monday, we'd print today is Monday. Else, it's not Monday. So what's going to be the answer? It's not Monday. So what it does is it looks at this condition. Today does not equal Monday. So it negates that statement, goes down to the next one, says, oh, else, we're not done yet. Boom. Let's do this. Make sense? Give me a situation where you want to use an if-else-if. An if-else-if.
It would be for nested.
Well, an if-else is a nested.
Do what?
An if-else can be a nested.
Which is basically.
Well, if it's if else, that would all be sequential, not nested. And else if would actually nest it.
Exactly. But they're technically nested, but they're not really what you would call a nest. Does that make sense? I'm throwing out that to confuse you. Because when you have two or more conditional statements from a condition, a true or false, that is considered a nest. But nesting a if-else-if, if-else-if, then that is a nested if-else statement because you have this other if-else that has to go through depending on the false of the first condition. Does that make sense? Everyone with me? So, if Scott's favorite color is not blue, then do this. If it is blue, then check this condition, and this condition may change it. And is essentially what it's saying with a nested if. You're anding, given another component. But you could do the same thing in the top one too. You could give multiple conditions if you wanted. But here's an example of a nested if. Sales total equals a window prompt. What is the sales total? With the 0. Okay? So that's what the sales total is. If sales total is greater than 50, okay. Is it greater than 50? No. So it would negate the rest of this. if I made this 51, it would go, if sales total is greater than 50, which it is, and less than 100, yes, then we would print out this statement. But if I said this number was 100, would it print out that statement? No. If I said it was 50, would it print out that statement? No, because it says greater than 50, which would mean 50.000001. Yeah. Window.prompt. All it is just give you a prompt where the users can say yes or no. All right. Give it a variable name. Say what the message is and give the default text. Your age. How old are you? Enter your age here. Okay. If you're asking them to put information in. Would you want to do that? Sure, if you're a social engineer. All right. Switch statements are also known as case statements, if you're familiar with Java. They come in what we call a case label. Just think of it as, in case that whatever the variable is, X, okay, and if it lists 1, 2, 10, whatever, you can set it up and tell me what you're going to do if that case is met. All right, here's our expression. If switch, whatever, okay, case, that label, which will be this expression, or what matches that expression, whatever it may be. If it's 1, then those statements. If it's 2, it's those statements. Default is the last one you'll always put in there. That's what happens if none of the other conditions are met. Look very familiar? Have I thrown anyone for a loop? Everyone ready to go to sleep? Everyone want me to just quit this semester? You ready for spring break? All right. Here's some examples that you could have. Case the example variable, a variable name equals this, then the statement could be that. Case it was a text string, then that literal text. It has to be in that order, caps, case sensitive, you name it. Case a number, it'll print that statement. Case a specific floating point, it'll print that. So you say, what is it? Now if I have multiple that I want to do the same statements, you can put a comma. So case 1, comma 2, comma 3, comma 4. So if the number comes out to be 1, 2, 3, or 4, it's going to print whatever's in that case. Does that make sense? So you're not copying that same case over and over and over and over. Just saves you a bunch of extra code. Like I said, the default label is what we have. And then you have the break statement, which says, okay, I'm at the end of my case. Make sense? So here's how you do it. Function, city location, switch. We're looking for this American city, which is that same variable that we're trying to define in our expression, right? Case, which should have been over here. Boston, return Massachusetts. Break. Did it meet Boston? If it didn't, then it breaks, goes to the next one. Was it Chicago? Nope. Was it LA? Nope. Was it Miami? Nope. Was it New York? Nope. Somewhere in the United States. That's all it means. But if it had been in Miami, boom, it would have said Florida, and the case is done. All right? After this case, it says, paragraph, whatever city, location is Boston. The city location Boston, what are they trying to say? Oh, they're setting it to be that? That's, oh, I guess they were just trying to show that, you know, if it had been Boston, it would have returned Massachusetts. The city location for Boston is it would have returned Massachusetts. But they shouldn't have put that in there because that's a little context. What they needed to do in this case is just leave it as city location, American city. Whatever it came out to be. Loop statements, basically repeating statements, the while, the do whiles, and the fors, right? Which one can you must go through at least once? The do while. Do this while X is done. So it's already, you're taking all the way through. Because if you start with a while or a for, you have to meet a certain condition before it runs. Remember that. That's the difference between a do while and a while. Does it make sense? A trick question. While statement. All you're gonna have is the condition. If it meets the condition, it'll run the loop. If it doesn't, it won't. Pretty simple. You have an increment, decrement operator or assignment operator where you can do multiplication equal to whatever. Pretty straightforward. And those are going to be your counters. X equals X plus plus, things of that nature. Minus minus X, however you want to do it. An example of it would be var count is 1. Well, count is less than or equal to 5. Print it out, count, and then give a break line. And then we're incrementing our count. You have printed 5 numbers would be what would happen after the loop is met. So what do? 1 is less than 5, so we print out 1. 2 is less than 5. 3 is less than 5. 4 is less than 5. 5 is less than 5 or equal to 5. 6 is not, so we can come down here because it breaks our conditional statement. You've had printed 5 numbers. Well, obviously, it'll tell you that you printed 5 numbers. Yes?
In this particular case, it wouldn't matter if you used the prefix or postfix operator, would it? On the plus plus count?
Well, it doesn't really matter because you're already in the loop. But on the for, you'll always want to use the post. Otherwise, you've skipped a number already. All right. Same thing. You can do minus minus count. It does just the opposite. We have lift off. You think they're talking about NASA, I guess. Count is less than or equal to 100. We're going to multiply by 2's. And if you haven't figured it out, that's the base 2 numbers. Binary. Subnetting. All right. The 2 words you want to stay away from. Infinite loop. Unless you really want to cause a DOS on a system and tick off somebody. Here's an example. Count equals 1. Is count less than 10? But I didn't put an increment in here. So every time it runs, count will always be less than or equal to 10. Guarantee you someone is going to have an infinite loop in this class. Happens all the time. All right, do while. We'll execute this statement, 1 or more statements at a time, then repeats it as long as the conditional is given. Here's the thing. Executes the statement or statements once. It will automatically do that. It's very important to know that, because if you don't want the loop to run if it doesn't meet a certain condition, then don't use a do while. But if you want it to run even though it doesn't meet a condition, then do a do while. All right? I know it kind of sounded repetitive, but we twisted it up. Examples. Count equals 2. The count is equal to whatever. We're going to increment it to plus plus count. It's going to run it through, right? So we have 2 to start with. While count is less than 2, which it's less than 2 that first time, right? We'd have that, it would have done it. And then it says, oh, while it's less than 2. Well, now it's 2, we're not going to do it anymore. If I do it this way, count is equal to, count is greater than 2, what's going to happen? Won't do it. Because this loop, if count is equal to 2, it's not going to be greater than 2 when it runs it. So it's not going to run it. See the difference? The VARs, the days of the week. Monday, Tuesday, we've set each one of those elements, IDs. Count is 0. Do days of the week count, whatever that element ID is going to be. And increment it and print them out, I'm pretty sure. Then we got while the count is less than the length of the days of the week. Does that make sense? So it's going to look up here. While it's less than 7, print it out. Count is at 0. And it'll print them out on Monday to Sunday. Any questions? Your for statements. This is where you start really getting into having fun with arrays and array lists and unique identifiers. There are 3 parts to a for loop. What are they? You have to set a value for the counter. You have the condition, and then you have its increment or decrement. Those are the 3 parts to a for loop that you have to have. And then you have your statements inside that for loop. All right. So when the interpreter looks for the for loop, it's going to say counter variable is declared and initialized x equals 0, right? For x equals 0. The for loop has a condition, x is less than 10. If it returns a value of true, the for loop statements will execute. Step 4 occurs and the process starts over again with step 2 and keeps on going. If the condition finally returns a value of false, the statement ends. Right? If x equals 10, as I said, until x equals less than 10, right? Is that what I said? Anyway, if x is less than 10, and once it reaches 10, then it stops. Then you have the update, whether you're going to do your increment or decrement. Would you want to decrement a for loop?
Possibly.
You could, if you're counting backwards. Just depends on how you do it. And we just the brightest stars and print them out. Alright. We created our new array for the variable count is equal to 0. Count is less than the brightest star's length. So there's 5 of them. Plus plus count. This is where we increment before.
That one's not gonna print
Because you're
first.
gonna start with 1. Alright? The for statement is more efficient than a while statement. Why? Because you have an exact amount of iterations that are going to happen. It's also shorter code. Because you have all your conditions up here. Alright. A while statement can be for, if you're looping that you need to declare, initialize, or update a counter variable. Ouch. Then it's good for that. Alright. We've done those. Continue statements. And a for loop with a break statement. What is a continue statement? Adam?
It's going to be kind of like if you've got, like say if you have a pop-up box and you're waiting for an answer, then you're going to wait until that answer to that pop-up box is going to be there, and then you're going to continue.
Correct. Depending on whatever's done. I'll tell you how to go on. What if I did a break?
It would completely exit.
It would exit the loop.
Starting the next iteration.
Exactly. So you need to watch out which way you can do it. So I'm going to continue here. If count equals 3, I'm going to hit continue, so they have to say, okay, boom, 3, and then it would go on. Which I don't know why I wouldn't print out 3, because if count is equal to 3, you continue, you wait till you hit it, and then it continues on the loop because you break your if statement here. Oh, no, never mind. I'm sorry. It goes on to the next iteration. Duh. Break, like DJ said, it exits out of the loop entirely. Any questions? Pretty simple chapter, right? Right? I don't ever cover the summary chapters. So, what is the game plan? What are we going to do? Well, I want y'all, since we've now covered chapter 3, your homework, how many of y'all have turned in chapter 2? Just a few of you? Everyone turned in chapter 1, right? All 10 of them? No, how many of you turned in chapter 3? Any of them? Any amount of them? Okay. Because I told y'all to hold off until I was ready. What we're going to do, there's only, 12 chapters in this book or 14? I don't remember.
It was just 12.
Just 12? Okay. We have plenty of time. Now that we're caught back up, next Saturday, we'll put it this way. By spring break, I want you to have had, if it's chapter 2, I want you to have the even exercises done. In chapter 3, I want you to turn in the odd only exercises. So if we have an odd if the chapter number is odd, we're going to do the odd exercises. If it's even, only do the evens. Do not turn in comprehension checks. Don't turn anything else in. I just want those 5, whatever the amount of those exercises are. Does that make sense? If there's only 4 exercises in the chapter, it's an odd chapter, you have 2 to do. All right? I want you to see the practical application of it. Does that make y'all feel a little bit better now? Do y'all go over it, and then I don't have my book and I didn't print out the exercises for this chapter, or else I'd bring a couple up to you and do it. Next week I'll have them out. We'll cover chapter 4, and that's all I'm going to cover until after spring break. Or maybe we have one. We have 2 weeks. We'll get through chapter 5 before spring break. So at the first Saturday of spring break, you better have the first 5 chapters done. Because after spring break, if you don't have them done, you get zeros for prior to spring break. Okay? So make sure you have the odds for chapter 2s and 4s done, and the evens for chapter 2 and 4, and the odds for 1, 3, and 5 done by the first Saturday in spring break. Now I know everyone's already turned in chapter 1, so don't worry about chapter 1. Just focus on 2, 3, 4, and 5. And we'll cover chapter 4 and 5 before spring break. Yes, Jackson. Are they still off? Okay. Karen, send me an email to remind me to change the due dates for those up to 5. Will be that first Saturday of spring break, and then I'm going to try to give you 2 weeks to do the assignments for the chapters. So for the following 7 chapters, we only have 8 weeks in class, so we'll have to bump it out. Your final exam in this class, right? You only have the final, you don't have a midterm? It will be very simple. You're going to handwrite me out on a piece of paper that I'll give you. And Jackson's like, no, don't do this to me. You're going to handwrite out a single web page with, I'll just say, you got to do these type of elements on your paper. I'll have 3 versions, A, B, and C. A may have, all may have like 50, or 20 different elements that will be required, and I'll leave it up to you how you want to design your page. Does that make sense?
So that'll be including the HTML elements?
Yes.
And all of that as well?
If I say, you need to give me a for loop, a while loop, a do while, and I say, here are the 20 elements I'm looking for in your thing, you can create any document that it has to use all those elements correctly. If I say throw a case statement in there, you're going to have to give me a case statement. I'm not going to say a case statement or a switch case with so many elements in it, but you need to know that there has to be that default and at least one other. Okay? Things of that nature. Make it simple. PHP, Perl, Python, and Ruby will not be on your final exam.
We're still doing
We're
the
still doing the
projects.
project?
Yes, we're still going to do a project. I'm going to speed it up as much as we can to get to that. So if I end up doing a couple chapters a night, so be it. But I'm going to give you that time out to do your homework. But I want to be able to lecture a complete night on each one of those languages. Because getting refocused on the actual scripting itself. Does that make sense? Once you pick up the syntax in the language back, it'll all be easy from there on out. No questions? Items and concerns, grab someone's complaints. Whoa. Immediately 4 hands come up. Yes, Cole.
Oh, no, I said not one.
Oh, not one. Wait, your hand moved. Karen.
It's your complaint.
Oh, my.
The book, surely it can't get worse. Yes, it can. It's just-
By the way, I'm sorry, guys. I failed y'all by not getting the book request done in time to change it for this colors. So, that was my fault. Hang on.
I missed. So are we back to doing homework assignments?
Yes, we will be.
Okay.
You're going to have the odd chapters. You'll do the odd answers just for the review exercises. Do not turn any comprehension checks in. I won't grade them, won't read them. It's a waste of your time. If even chapters, you do the even review exercises. And you will turn those in.
Okay, is that starting after chapter 3 or?
It's starting now. Until the first Saturday of spring break, you have to get up through chapter 5 done.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to find out.
All right? And come that Sunday of spring break, if you don't have anything in, the Dropbox is closed. It's too late. I won't accept it. Because I've given you 8 weeks to do what we should have done in the first 3. So I think I've been a little bit more than lenient to give you some time to work on it, right?
So if we already turned in 2, like if we
Then you don't have to do 2. If you've already turned them in, I'll already had your answers for it.
Okay.
But if you want to go back and change them and fix them, absolutely fine. Because I'm not going to grade them until spring break. Yeah, don't I like torture? I like to grade things on spring break. My life never ends, I tell you that. Yes, Christina.
I was just gonna ask, since this book is so terrible, is there a different book that you recommend, like as far as self-study?
I am still trying to find one that I like. So the answer is, when you have legal people trying to write programming books, it does not work. Or technical writers trying to write programming books, it doesn't work. I've really thought about just writing a JavaScript book or a Perl book. You know, get something that will be useful to the students and talk in the terms that y'all would understand. And I'm not saying that to be mean or some authors just go off on these wild tangents that have absolutely nothing to do with the book. You know, if you're going to illustrate something, illustrate it and give me a personal way to illustrate it. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Like if you're going to use baseball as your code, then use a baseball analogy to fit it. Because people that may not have any clue about baseball, if you're just writing code in baseball, they're going to like, what does this got to do? You know, where am I understanding? But if they can picture how this code is really implemented, it changes the whole spectrum. I believe so. I don't know about y'all. But that's what I want to see is that practical application being applied to where not only you do, it's like you do the homework in class, but when you get to the real world, you don't know what to do. I want you, when you graduate here, to go out to the real world and know exactly what to do. Because you've had that hands-on. You've had that practical experience. You've been able to see it and put it into your own terms and your expectations. Does that make sense? But as far as that, I have not found a book that's worth more than this is. Authors out there just don't care. They're in it for the money. Yeah, I would want a little money for the time that I put in to write it, but I don't have to be a millionaire for it. You know, I've always thought about as a kind of a side hobby of being a teacher is writing the books for the students and see if I can't get them published. And see if more educational institutions will buy those books for the students, you know, and try to keep it as low cost as possible. But
One thing,
yes,
the JavaScript, and I haven't started that module yet, but CodeAcademy.com does have a JavaScript module.
codeacademy.com.
I've been doing the Python one, and it's been pretty cool. So,
Shoot me that link so I can look at it.
okay.
I'm not saying with a gun or anything, just email it to me. I saw DJ's mind just going, oh, really? He wants me to shoot him. Yay.
No, I was just thinking you can't remember CodeAcademy.com.
Well,
That's okay.
when you have 8 classes and 130 students, 140 students, or no, I was already at 160, so I added another 20. So 180 students. And then I have a class over there that has 3, so I don't even really count them. But 180 students, and everyone's turning in 10 assignments a week. I don't really have time to remember hyperlinks. And that's no pun on you, DJ. It's just, that's why I ask you to send me email reminders, because otherwise I will totally space it, because I've got other things on my mind, trying to keep up with everything that we're doing in all the classes. That's why I haven't really started asking too many questions. I pick on only a couple people. Sorry for the new ones. That if I hadn't remembered your name, you're actually lucky. Because I'll pick on people like Karen and Cole and, right, Bryce? Bryce and Christina and Adam got hit last semester pretty hard by me. So, I'm not saying that to scare you off, but I know you. I want to be able to bring it out. And if you have questions, ask them. Don't wait until next week, because I don't remember what I said in this classroom. Even though I have a photographic memory, I don't remember every cotton picking word I say direct. I want to make sure I give you the right answer. My tongue is going to slip. I'll tell you that now. I'm not going to. Never mind. I better shut up before I get myself in trouble. I'm not going to be like someone that says that they have slip of tongues after they say something 29 times. Okay? I want to be the best that I can be to help you. So if you have a question in class, ask it, because I guarantee you someone else has the exact same question. Neither one of you ask it. No one's going to know the answer. All right? Does this method, given the time after the lecture, I want to start doing the hands-on next week with you so you can actually see how we implement these. As I said, do the exercises in class is what we're doing. Covering through the book. Is the book following along with these pretty well?
So far. See how chapter 4 goes.
All right. Like I said, I'm putting all these up on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, and all my classes. You can go and listen to all the recordings from all my other classes, and it'll tell you I'm still as goofy as in another class as I am in here. But you can go out there, and I encourage you to go out there, even if you haven't had the class, listen to the videos. So that'll kind of give you an idea of what you can expect for a class. Because that may help you when you're trying to enroll. Do I want network security this semester? Oh, well, this sounds like it'll be an easier class, so I can do this, especially if I'm taking Prof. Dewey's forensics and computer security at the same time. You know what I'm saying? Well, you got to weigh out how much homework you're doing and what. But anyway, that's my hill of beans tonight, and I'm being nice. Y'all have a wonderful 20-minute early dismissal tonight.